We are live in Southern California. Welcome to Big Bet on a Saturday as we strike up the band and get ready for a full slate of college football and some key matchups today. Week number 2 of the college football season, and not disappointing so far because we've seen some pretty good matchups in the short time, as mentioned, week number 2. We got some games that we'll talk about. Ohio will visit the Panthers in Pittsburgh. Army will go to the Big House in Michigan. Vandy will travel to Purdue. Syracuse travels to Maryland. West Virginia travels to Missouri. Cincinnati and Ohio State kick it off right about an hour from now. Bowling Green in Kansas State. Nebraska, Colorado. And then some good ones. Texas A&M and Clemson. Stanford, USC, LSU, Texas. Let's go out to Bob Hutton as he joins us on Big Bet on a Saturday morning. Hut, atop of the morning, you ready for this action?
Oh, sure am. Matter of fact, there's one starting already, Felix.
And who's that?
Ohio and Pitt, your team from Pitt.
That's right. The Panthers, that game being the Panthers 4-53. I looked at this game quite a bit. I kind of figured that Ohio must have same style of game attack that the Panthers have, with it only being 4. We talked earlier in the week, Hut, and we talked about the conferences. And now I think that as a handicapper, you have to look at all conferences when you have these early season matchups. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and there's some conferences, Felix, that are making some moves in the right direction as far as balance and talent is concerned, and 2 of them that are probably, the MAC's always been kind of one of those conferences that can come up and sneak up on people, but the Sun Belt is actually getting some better talent these days. So years ago, when the Big 5 conferences used to play these games to go ahead and enhance their record or use them as almost a preseason game. Some of these games they're getting a little tight and a little concerning. I mean, take the Tennessee and Georgia State game last week. That was a shocker to some people, but that could cost the Tennessee staff some jobs as far as that's concerned. They're supposed to whip up on a team like that.
Yeah, they were, I think, 26, 28-point favorites, 34 maybe. I can't remember. It was a large number. And they got whipped. The late Jerry Tarkanian used to tell me, Hut, that there's a small difference between, and the window's closing very quickly, between mid-majors and majors. Inside the studio we go, Tommy D, on a big Saturday. I know one game that you're mostly concerned with, and we're going to be talking about that game. Your Orangemen, Tommy D, go into the Mid-Atlantic to play Big Ten. Maryland's in the Big Ten. And that's hard for me to understand because Maryland was always in the ACC. But Big Ten, Maryland and Syracuse, Tommy D, a great matchup on these games today.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. College football, great season, back in action, second week. So we got to see a little bit what goes on last week, and that's always a good test. You want to see the first couple weeks, see how these teams perform. And, you got to look forward at the schedule because a lot of these teams have maybe softer games looking ahead for the next one. And Syracuse is a good example. Maryland is no slouch. They won 79-0 last week against Howard. And now they go down into Maryland. They started off as -4 underdogs. The line totally shifted there. Syracuse, I'm not quite sure what it is at the current moment, but it went up to +2 even for Syracuse. So a lot of people on Maryland here. I expect Syracuse to go pretty good here. Defense.
This game has gone Maryland -1. What do you think about this line movement? We talked about this game. This is one of the games that I have an interest in, and I've been monitoring the line swings and the totals and what have you. I've been researching it all, looked into the weather. Syracuse and Maryland, this is a pretty even matchup, indicative of the 1-point favoritism that is given to Maryland.
Yeah, and probably the biggest variable as far as this game is concerned, to me, Felix, is number one, that Syracuse, I believe they played Liberty last week, and so it was one of those preseason games, and and they didn't really light up the scoreboard or do anything that impressively. They lost their quarterback. What's his name, Tommy? Is Dungy or from last year? Yeah, and he was a good ball player, and I think that Syracuse has some talent. But the biggest concern that I have for Syracuse this week is they play Clemson at home next week, and to me, this is a total look-ahead game. I like Maryland in this spot. I think I watched them play last year. They've rounded into a good balanced squad. It is odd that they play in the Big Ten because you say Maryland, you're thinking the South, and you're saying, what are they doing up in the Big Ten? But this is a pretty good football team, and I expect that it will be a very competitive game. But I give the edge to Maryland in this spot just to win because it's only -1. And I think that Syracuse is in a position where they could overlook Maryland in the spot and look ahead to Clemson.
But there's also variables that go into this contest as well. Isn't the head coach of Maryland, he in his first year? I believe he is. I believe it's Mike Locksley. And so Dino Barbers, or how, is it, what's the name of the coach of the Syracuse?
Dino Barbers, yeah.
I believe it's Barbers, yes.
Okay. That's a pretty seasoned coach. I mean, like, this game is very, very tight. Tommy D, well, Bob Hutton said he likes Maryland in his position, and you want a counterpoint?
Sure, yeah. This line does worry me a little bit, Bob. I got to tell you, going from -4 to +1. I like the points, but you're right. The X factor is going to be the quarterback, Tommy DeVito. If he could show up and improve this week, I think they have a good chance. But Mo Neal's the key here. He's a running back, senior for Syracuse. He had 14 carries, 89 yards last week. If he could get the ball running, this will open it up for Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito's, they expect good things from this guy, so he could. But, what it all comes down to is the Syracuse defense. 24-0, and this defense, same last year. They didn't lose too many guys. They have Lakeem Williams, led the Orange last week, 11 tackles, 1.5 sacks. They had 8 sacks last week, 14 tackles for losses. This defense is stout. Maryland's not going up against no Howard defense, so... but the Virginia Tech transfer quarterback is the key here, Howard Jackson. If he could play a good game, he's going to give Syracuse a tough time. I like Syracuse here, but I like the under. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Both defenses, big time today.
Maryland beginning the year with a new quarterback, and that's their 5th new quarterback in 5 years. So they start the season each and every one of the last 5 seasons with a brand new quarterback. I'm trying to analyze this game because I think this game has a lot of value to it as far as, being able to put the puzzles together and have an interest. I would check mark Syracuse. I've been swaying back and forth. I know Hutt likes Maryland, but this is a game now that is very, very confusing to me, so I will pass it. Let's go to the big house. Army in Michigan, Hutt and Tommy D. Michigan currently coming in with a 22-point favorite role in this game against Army. That total is right at 48. What do you think, Hutt, regarding Michigan Army?
Well, if the biggest thing is when you face a team like Army is do you have time to practice for their option? And I think that the Michigan defense, I watched them last week. They've got a lot of talent. They lost some players from last year that were first-round draft picks. I watched Army play Rice last week. I got to tell you, Felix, I wasn't very impressed as far as what I saw on the eye test today. It's not a game that I particularly like. I could see Army trying to, take the air out of the football and just keep it on the ground, and they'd be happy if they took up 5 minutes and punted it. This looks like an under game to me as far as that's concerned, but I don't like the game at all.
Army hasn't been beaten by more than 14 points in a long period of time. This line might be overinflated. I know a new quarterback coming into the system for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. They need that quarterback play in the Big Ten. That's where Harbaugh's mindset's going. This might be the coming out party for the Michigan Wolverines. Your thoughts, Tommy D?
You know what? I think the line might be too big. Yeah, Michigan's got a solid squad this year, but that's a lot of points, 22 points. And let's think last year. Army only within a touchdown against Oklahoma last year. So their team is supposed to be better this year. So I think Army could stay within the points. I'm not going to touch this game, but I would go with Army here with the points. I think Michigan does win the game, but I think Army can keep it close here.
All right, so you'll take the Army in 22. One of the key games that we want to talk about is a game that I think will have marquee value for the regions, and that's LSU and Texas. LSU currently a 6.5-point favorite. They travel to Austin to play the Longhorns. This is a very, very big game. What do you think, Bob Hutton, in regard to LSU, Texas?
Well, Texas is led by Sam. I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Ettinger.
Ettinger, yes.
He's a junior. Yeah, and he's a real solid player. They got a lot of skill players. They got They only have 3 starters back on defense, Felix, which is a concern for me as far as stopping this LSU team. Herman's a good coach. I probably understated that. He's probably a great coach, and he's got a great record as a home dog. They play Rice next week, so it's not going to be any kind of. I mean, this is their focus this week is LSU. LSU on the other side, Felix has. The experts believe they're going to be right up there with Alabama. If they didn't have to play in Tuscaloosa this year, they'd probably be favored. Joe Burrow, the quarterback, he's a good game manager. He's surrounded by a lot of good skill players. They got 8 starters back on offense and 8 on defense. They looked very good last week. This could be the best defense in the country. They play Northwestern State next week. The game opened at 5, and it was at 56, and I've seen 7s all over and 57 now. I think LSU's for real. This is going to be a tough place to win. It's not a game that it's 7. I don't like it at 7. It's 6. If I can get 6.5 or buy it down, I'll probably do that. But I like LSU in this spot, but I don't like the number being at 7.
It's 6.5 right now. Dead cold 6.5 across the board. Monitoring 4 different sports books. The total 57.5, as you mentioned. LSU opened up at 4.5. On the road, the home dogs, Tommy D. The home dogs, Texas. This is a very big game for Tom Herman at Texas. If he can pull an upset there, he gets everybody off his back end.
Yeah, speaking of that, Tom Herman is 14-2 as the home dog, so good chance there. Texas is a tough place to play. LSU is 7-11 as the away chalk here, so stats go against LSU here. I think Bob's on to something with LSU being a solid, but going into Texas' first game, I think there's too many points there, in my opinion. But LSU is going to be solid, but I would take Texas with the points. I think Tom Herman, they're all jacked up, had a nice big win opening against Louisiana Tech, very solid game. So I like Texas with the points today at home.
So LSU, Texas, and I agree with both of you guys. I think LSU is going to be dynamite. They're geared up for a run at the national championship. Texas continues to need to improve. They got off to a dismal start last year, and then they rallied somewhat. So usually in the second and third year of a head coach, that's when his program should kick into high octane. And I'm talking about Texas. Coach O down in LSU, he got the job, he got the extension. Now, there's no better place to be as as he says, than being in Baton Rouge to be the head coach of the LSU Tigers. But what a game this is going to be. You know, a game that I think, and I want to talk to you guys about a little bit, is a game that might be off the radar, but it's one of the teams that was very, very good last year. And I'm talking about Buffalo. Buffalo's going into Penn State, Bob Higgins and Tommy D. Bob Hutton, I should say. Bob Hutton and Tommy D. Buffalo and Penn State. Penn State is a 30-point favorite against Buffalo. Bob, Hut, tell me this number is out of whack.
Well, as far as the Bulls are concerned, they had a lot of offensive talent last year, and a lot of people think this is a rebuilding year for them. It's a game that I'm just not interested in. I don't know enough about Buffalo to go ahead and form an opinion, but 30 points seems like, I think it's made on that they Penn State shellacked somebody last week, and I thought they scored
79
Tommy
points.
Probably will remember. Yeah, I mean they just rolled over somebody last week, and Penn State usually in these games at the beginning of the season, when they play, usually they play Mid-American teams or somebody from the Sun Belt comes in, and they usually do handle business pretty good. This is something, as far as this game is concerned, I know Penn State, they think they're going to have a pretty solid year, the Nittany Lions. So I'm not a big fan of this game. I just think it's probably too many, and this could be one of those things, Felix, where they're up by 35 in the last 2 minutes, and Buffalo gets a backdoor cover.
I'm not so sure that Buffalo is 30 points less the team that Penn State is, and so I would go ahead and give the check mark to Buffalo. I know that Penn State beat up on somebody. I can't remember who it was at the moment, but Tommy D, going back to your neck of the woods, Buffalo and Penn State. Penn State, a fat 30-point favorite in this game.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of points here. I don't love this game, playing down at Penn State, going down there for a game. Unbelievable atmosphere, trying to get on track here. So they are going to try to blow Buffalo out of the water. But that's a lot of points. Buffalo, as you know, they did lose some players last year, but they still got a team and they could show up. That's a lot of points to give. So I'm not in love with this game. Can Penn State roll over them? Yeah, but UB, that's a lot of points.
Newsflash. Penn State crumbled Idaho last Saturday. Hut and Tommy D. So, wow, man, they put a big 79 on them. We go up to the Rose Bowl at this moment here. Brian Finley is joining us from UCLA and San Diego State. My man, Brian, how you doing?
What's going on, guys? Good morning to you.
Hey, what are you doing, man?
What am I doing? I'm getting ready to go to the Rose Bowl here in a little bit and hopefully watch this Bruin game and see Chip Kelly turn things around and begin to get those wins. And I think he's got a good chance here because it looks like San Diego State's offense is not really much to brag about at this point.
Well, they only scored 6 points. I don't know if it was a touchdown or 2 field goals against Weber State last weekend, but UCLA was no better as they opened up. So what's been the talk around the Bruin Village, and is the pressure on the Bruins to come out and shellac San Diego State, because this total was right at 45, and it might take 2 Saturdays for them to achieve that number. What's been the word? What's been the word around the Village, Brian?
The biggest thing is, how is their quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson going to bounce back? I mean, he's saying all the right things this week. He said the 4 turnovers he had against Cincinnati last week was due to him being too excited. And, he had 2 fumbles in the red zone against Cincinnati a week ago. He had 2 interceptions, only 8 completions. So this was not a great game for him. And honestly, this relies a lot on his shoulders, how he performs out there, because I honestly see it like this. If the Bruins can stop San Diego State's rushing attack, because we know that the Aztecs almost they use way too much with their running game, and they don't diversify their offense. And if I think UCLA involves their tight ends a little bit more in the passing game and keeps their turnovers down to 2 or less, The Bruins got this. But, yeah, there is some panic, and it's affected the number of people that are showing up to the Rose Bowl, right? So the numbers are down, and the only thing that's going to cure that is winning, and it starts with what they can do today.
Just remember the number 3-9. 3-9. That's what Chip Kelly went last year in his first year as head coach of UCLA Bruins. 3-9. And why the attendance might be down at the Rose Bowl is because you got to win. Bub Hutton, we got Brian Finley on. What do you think about UCLA, San Diego State, Hut?
Well, the Bruins are they played a pretty competitive game against Cincinnati last week, and they, as far as the returners, they've got 9 returners on the offensive side of the ball and 10 on the defense, which is probably what Chip Kelly wanted to go. You know, it seems like he's instilling his own guys now as far as that's concerned, the guys that are going to be playing all the time and making an impact. The spread, it opened at 6.5 and at 46, and now it's at 8 and 45. I think the players believe that the San Diego State offense is anemic based on that, because usually when UCLA plays in games, usually the totals are 55 to 60 or higher. In this case, though, one of the big things that I'm looking at is UCLA plays Oklahoma next week. And I don't know if that's a look-ahead game for them that they're playing San Diego State this week. You know, as far as San Diego State is concerned, they have 5 returning starters on defense, which is usually their best side of the ball as far as they've been a pretty good defensive unit over the years. They got New Mexico State next week, which is not going to be a big deal to them. They have... over the last 3 years, San Diego State has beaten Pac-12 teams 4 times in the last 3 years. And road openers, though, they're 2-5 over the last 7 years. So you're getting kind of mixed information here as far as that's concerned. But I think the key one is they've beaten Pac-12 teams 4 times in the last 3 years, which tells me they're competitive with Pac-12. And I don't think the Pac-12, once again, I'd love to see great football in college on the West Coast, but, boy, they seem like they might be the 5th or 6th best division in the country.
Yeah, Bob, Tommy D. Jeff Horton, offensive coordinator, people in San Diego already want this guy's job out the door because 6 points against Weber State. Weber State. I love the under here. I think that, you know, both offenses look to struggle here, and they're both defensive strong. I like the under in this game. But, you know, both teams really need to step it up. I mean, San Diego State looks like they're struggling. UCLA, you know, Brian's talking about them. They need a big win this week, so we'll find out. But I like the under here. Brian, your thoughts on a pick here?
Guys, you know, I got to go with UCLA. I think they'll win by – I think it's going to be low scoring. I'm thinking we're going like, I don't know, 20 to 14. I'm going 20 to 14 Bruins.
20-14.
Then you got to play San Diego State.
What's that?
Then you got to play San Diego State. They're getting 8.
Yeah. Well, then, I just think this is too big of a game for UCLA. They got to win this game.
Yeah.
They got to win this game.
Yeah, they do.
Definitely.
I mean, the pressure's on UCLA with Chip Kelly. I mean, they lose to San Diego State, Cincinnati. San Diego State begin 0-2. 91,000 is the seating capacity at the Rose Bowl. You might just be able to block off the other half of it because that's what you're going to get if UCLA starts off at 0-2. But I just don't know what to make of the quarterback situation, Tommy D, with San Diego State. I mean, you don't get any points on the board with your offense against Weber State. Now, I don't know very much about Weber State, and I'm sure you don't know much about Weber State, but you would think that the San Diego State would score more than 6 points and be all out in winning the game.
You would hope so, and that's the issue. You know, San Diego State having some issues and not knowing where to go, and you know they plan to come out and win that game, and they try to come out and win big against Weber State. I think you know SDSU's got their heads down. They're going to come out and play a lot harder today, but it's going to be a defensive battle, like I said.
Brian Finley is joining us from Los Angeles. He's a member of the Fox Sports radio team up there in Los Angeles. Our good pal who grew up here in San Diego and has found his way into Los Angeles around the coffee machine or the water cooler at Fox Sports. You're hanging out with all the bros up there, and, they're telling you what they know. What games did you hear about in the hallway that have a major interest, Brian?
Oh, guys, I'm looking at that. It looks like it's LSU, Texas. That looks like a lot of fun. I think that's going to be a big one. Honestly, my kind of I'm kind of worrying. What do you put on the horse? The blinkers. It's mostly just on this UCLA San Diego State game, and basically I've just kind of been asking coworkers about that game particularly because it's so big. And as you said, Felix, it is a must-win because then you've got Oklahoma, and then you start out the Pac-12 slate with 2 games on the road with Washington State and Arizona. So those first 5 games are tough. The Bruins last year, they went 0-5 to start this year. They can't do that again. So like you said, Felix, as cliche as it sounds, a must-win, yes, today, no question.
Week number 2, Hut, UCLA or San Diego State, where you give the check mark to?
I would based on everything that I've looked at so far, I do believe that UCLA is the play here. I think they'll win by more than 6. I'm looking at them winning by 10 or 14 points in this game. I think the difference is that UCLA's defense is played relatively well last week against probably a better Cincinnati team. And the biggest key here for UCLA, they got to win. If they don't win here, and then they go to Washington and they play Oklahoma, they could start 0-4 again, which would be devastating for the program. So this is probably the most winnable game they have in their first 4 of the year.
Yeah, no, I think you guys are right on it. UCLA needs a big-time Chip Kelly. They got to get it done, or else, this could be...
Maybe you'll be up there next week. Maybe we'll be up there. Yeah. I'll be the offensive coordinator. You can be the head coach.
Here we go. We got Brian. We're going to come hang out with you up there, buddy. Come on, let's do it. UCLA.
We can get an offense going, okay? We could run a little bit of cross buckles and cross traps and what have you.
50. Oh, look at you guys.
Oh, yeah. No, we could run that football, but that's what you're going to see from San Diego State tonight. And what time is that kickoff, by the way, Brian?
It's actually 1:15, so I'm going to head over there here in just a few minutes just to make sure I get there with plenty of time to spare. And, yeah, man, like you said, San Diego State loves to run the football. I don't know how much confidence the coaching staff has in their quarterback to make plays through the passing game. He didn't complete a pass more than 11 yards last week, and that doesn't give you a lot of confidence that he could take a deep shot.
Yeah, we're going to send Wade Taylor up there for the quarterback position. He can throw more than 11 yards. He was practicing out there in the office. Let me ask you this. Why is this game 1:15 and not a night game tonight?
Maybe it's just because both teams are not eye-popping out there, and maybe they feel like they can get a better marquee matchup in a primetime spot. That's probably what I'm thinking. So the game is on Pac-12 Network, so it's not on a Fox, it's not on the so that's probably why.
That's exactly the reason why now, because it's a Pac-12 network game, and basically they're looking for the network. This game should have been played just like every other UCLA game's played, or most of them,
sure,
at nighttime. And so San Diego State, we had a great contingent, a good following up there. Brian, we'll let you fly, but have a great game and have a great afternoon up there at Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. And thanks, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll be watching for you.
Look forward to it, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, Brian Finley up there, Fox Sports LA, and our good pal talking about UCLA. Matter of fact, he's covering that game for a couple TV stations up there. So a game that I looked at, it's an obvious under. It's an obvious under, but will it go under? These are the games that, when they're obvious, do they turn out to be obvious? And Bob Hutton, there's so many different variables that we look at in handicapping football games or whatever we handicap. what's some of the new variables that you're bringing to the table? One of the things that we talked about, you and I, was the fact that the window has closed from mid-majors to majors. And so some of these mid-majors teams, their program is catching up with the majors. But let me tell you, and let me ask you, well, what's some of the mindsets that early on in your campaign, this year speaking, that you said, okay, look, this is what I'm going to focus my attention on. Anything new that you're bringing to the party?
Well, I don't know if it's relatively new, Felix, but I do look at teams that have to prepare for certain offenses that might not be your typical pro style or a run and shoot offense. You know, that it's always seems to be difficult for certain teams to go ahead and get ready for that option attack, especially when they only have 1 week to get ready for it, and they don't see it very often. And that could be the problem with Michigan today, as far as Army just taking the air out of the football. You know, Army would be very happy if they gained 3.5 yards of play. They would control the ball. They would just sit on it and keep it out of Michigan's hands. But the other thing that I look at, you know, I always look at the schedule, Felix, and I put a lot of more weight on it than I used to as far as the conferences are concerned. Who's playing who? Give you an example. The Pac-12 has not done well out of conference so far over the last 2 years, and it seems like they're traveling a lot as far as they're playing big games on the road, and it's kind of hurt them a little bit, and they don't get the TV coverage that a lot of these East Coast teams get. And then I look at the injuries a lot. I mean, there's a lot of key injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. When I see something where key defensive players, especially defensive backs, are out, it seems like when you can run away from a guy offensively if there's a backup. Like if there's a left tackle and he's a backup, maybe you just go to the right or you give him help. You chip his defensive end and you can help a guy like that. But when you're a cornerback and you're replacing a starter, they seem to find you on every play. So the defensive injuries to me are much more important than the offensive injuries, as far as unless it's a quarterback. But those are some things that I kind of focus in on.
Tommy D, I'll pose the same question to you.
Yeah, no, you just got. I think Bob said a good thing. Just looking at injury list, the trends. I think looking at trends is important. The numbers don't lie. So when you look at something and it says it's 14-2 home dog, there's a good chances that 14. The percentages don't lie. That's what numbers come down to.
I disagree. Numbers do lie.
They can lie, but
okay,
if you play them consistently.
Well, let me tell you why I say this. That's what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for the wrong number in these games, okay? And when I have no monetary interest, which I'm going to try to do this for all season long because I have a couple clients that, that said, look, if you give me the games, I'll play them, and, whatever we do. And I go, fine. You know what? I don't have any pressure. I don't have any monetary value into it. And so basically that's going to be my mindset. So I liked 2 games last night. The first game that I really liked, and when my first instinct, and I knew that Marshall and Boise State would never hit the 56 total.